Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we started off The Abominable Snowman. What was that one about?
Okay, so they land on the north side of the Himalayas in the Tibetan region. And the Doctor remembers that he accidentally stole some kind of religious relic, a bell, and so he's going to return it to the monastery. But we find out that there are some abominable snowmen that are being tracked by Professor
Travers.
So they make their way to the monastery, only to find out that the Yeti, the snowmen, are actually some kind of robots. They have some kind of sphere that fits into their abdominal region that controls them. And you've got the Buddhist warriors who are defending the monastery, who are originally against the Doctor, but then finally turned towards him. If I remember that correctly, they said...
For the most part,
yeah.
sort of.
And, Travers is the, stereotypical mad anthropologist. Anyway, and if I recall correctly, that's kind of where we left it.
Yeah. We do also have the Great Intelligence, which is controlling the Yetis.
Yes, we're assuming that.
I think they said it at one point. They were like, the Great Intelligence will be born or something. I think, if I remember correctly, and this doesn't sound correct, so don't quote me on this, but I think it was something like they're going to give the Great Intelligence a body.
Something yeah, something there was that. There was a very oblique, very vague reference to greater or great intelligence. So
yeah, so
we're assuming, having gone through the tour of Classic Who, that we do see the Great Intelligence later on. That this is where it initially comes from.
Right. And those first 3 episodes we watched were kind of dull. Honestly, they were very slow. They kind of felt like a first Doctor episode. They weren't the most exciting. So,
and of course, the Abominable Snowmen are abominable. I mean, that is one of the worst costumes that we have seen in the 5 seasons now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the only costume that I've seen that are worse are the jelly blobs
from the 3 Doctors. Yeah. So, I have no idea if these next 3 parts are going to be perhaps more entertaining. I will say part of it, and we sort of talked about this last episode, but part of it is that a bit of the mystery is lost on us because we already know, okay, the Yetis and the Great Intelligence and that stuff. So part of that is sort of our fault. That's not really on the episode. But those 3 episodes were still pretty slow and pretty dull. Yeah. So, we'll see if it can shape up in these last 3 episodes. So, I guess we should go ahead and get started.
Might as well. The monks fire arrows at the Yeti and attack it with swords.
Oh, now they have weapons.
Arrows penetrate the Yeti, but it lumbers on towards the gate. The Yeti pushes past the monks and out through the gate. Obviously some censored for violence scenes.
Yeah.
That wasn't much violence, though.
Could have been like outtakes or something. That's a legit shot. That's not CG.
One of the Yeti is carrying the sphere from the monastery.
That was weird. That was very weird.
He watches Songsten take the sphere and enter the cave.
I forgot about Songsten, the guy who looks the least like a monk.
Doctor!
Great shot there.
Oh.
Not that one, but the one of the background.
Songsten is making final preparations.
Songsten places the sphere in its position among the others.
I wish the line there was just, Songsten is making final preparations.
He puts the pyramid down in the center of the spheres.
Maybe it's going to be like a giant body that's just made up of a bunch of balls.
I don't know as I'd have said that. Still hidden, Travers watches as Songsten exits the cave.
You really got your work cut out for you on this one.
Yeah. Well, like 4 lines of dialogue here. Songsten and the Yeti move off. He takes a screwdriver from his pocket and opens the flap.
Will you hold this flap open for me, please?
He has been using a screwdriver a lot.
The pyramid emits a glutinous mass that increases in size. Almost demented, Travers gets up and runs out of the cave. Glutinous? Wonder if it meant gelatinous.
Maybe.
Were you not with the creature when it came to life?
Yes, but
You think that she else could have done this?
This is foolishness.
Witchcraft.
The creature was here, dead.
They send a response signal and head in another direction.
Thought it was just an alien. Turns out it was dumb head hair.
Yeah.
Doctor, let's get to the morning.
Victoria is anxiously pacing up and down inside the cell.
We've run out of things for her to do now.
Wonder if this is the same cell she was in with the evil of the Daleks.
I will tell you how to deal with them if they return.
Guy needs to take like 2 steps back from his microphone.
Now they look like giant chickens.
no, 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 don't touch it, the drink! No!
It's Victoria!
Tommy and Rampachan lift her onto the bed.
I will fetch some water. Stay close to her, Tommy.
I hope it's not fast-acting poison.
Victoria opens her eyes, smiles at Tommy, and gets up.
Victoria!
Oh.
I'm sorry, Tommy.
She rushes out and locks the door.
Victoria!
I've been played the fool.
In his wisdom,
If they will not be led, then they must be driven from the monastery.
understand.
But you know, he has all the warriors. You'd think he'd be alright.
Come in.
I know me better.
You have no alternative.
What did he say?
I don't know. Do you want to go back?
It kind of sounded like you have no alternative, but
Yeah.
You have no alternative.
you have no alternative. All right.
Okay then. That is part 4.
Well, again, it's a decent story. We're suffering because it's in recons,
Yeah.
but I don't know if watching it in real time, it would have been any better because, again, there's just huge stretches where there's literally
Yeah.
no action. So, I don't want to criticize it for being slow
Yeah.
because we're watching the recon, but on the other hand, I cannot see how there was that much more action that we would be watching.
Yeah. So, okay. So, the events of this episode, just to go over them. The Doctor and Jamie came back. Travers came back. And Songsten and Krisong are against each other. That's an actual thing. And Victoria has found him. That
Padma something.
yeah. I guess another development, not just Travers came back, but Travers did see the body that was being formed. Feel like you could have cut this down. Like, that's not a lot of things happening in an episode, you know? Like, and I know the whole thing of, well, you know, they were given, like, hey, we need this story to be 6 weeks. So you make it 6 weeks. That's great. But still, I have to sit here and say this could have been cut down. You know what? I don't understand. Why can't you do, like, if it's like, okay, we have to fill 6 weeks. Okay, I have a story that can last 4. Okay, can you do another short story that lasts 2? That way we can do that instead of stretching one over 6.
Now, one of the commenters has said before that part of this is they needed them to be 6 weeks so that they could save on set building and costumes. You know, that they weren't on a month turnover. They're on a month and a half turnover.
Yeah.
But even that, I think what would be better is combine your idea with what they're doing here, and that is, instead of just having the one plot, have a subplot. Have something going on. I don't even know what we could add in here. The Travers subplot seems to be, if he could have had something else on his mind other than, being the mad anthropologist, if he suspected that these were not real Yetis, whatever, just something that would help take up that time, because right now it's plodding. I mean, even if we were watching the live action, I think this would be a very slow-paced episode.
Yeah. And because I was just thinking, like, okay, well, what could they do? They could take the two characters that have the least amount to do right now, which is Travers and Victoria, put them together in their own subplots. Like, okay, they have to go off and maybe they have to find him, find the guy. And then that is their sort of subplot while the Doctor is back at the monastery working on the Yetis and stuff. Then they converge and take down the Great Intelligence or whatever. Yeah. It's just... And the other thing I also don't get, it's not only is this 6 episodes that it's like there's not enough story here, but 2 people wrote this.
Yeah.
When you have 2 people write, I feel like there should be enough ideas in there to get 6 episodes. So
yeah,
I don't know, and I almost fear that for almost the remainder of the Second Doctor's era, it's mostly 6-parters. Like, I think there's like an occasional 5-parter. There's like one more 4-parter, and then I think the end is like a 10-parter. But it's I don't know. The 6-parters are not the greatest we ever have.
Yeah.
So
now again, part of that may be because we're watching them all together. If we had watched them 1 week at a time, the anticipation of the next week might have somewhat overcome that. But
I mean, but you could also say we're also, not only because we're watching these, multiple episodes at a time, but we're also in the wrong mindset, obviously. We're not watching this as teenagers in the 60s where it's this or the news, I guess. I don't know, like, you don't get that many channels back then,
But now, again, though, the evening kind of programs, what we would call the soap operas, I was never a real fan of, but they had variety shows. I remember Sunday night at the London Palladium was a fun evening. Steptoe and Son, several others. So there were other things to watch. And again, for a kid, you're watching Fireball XL5 and some of the other basic stuff like that. So there is plenty of stuff. And again, this seems to be bogging down this particular serial, not the series as a whole. I specifically said I didn't know if I would have kept watching Doctor Who if I had watched 4 or 5 weeks of the Power of the Daleks, but if I had managed to survive that, I would be back into it by now, because I think Troughton is doing a great job. He's come up with a very interesting character. It's not Hartnell, it's his complete character. He's taken it over, and that's fine. But again, this idea that it's just, one incredibly slow plotting episode per week over 6 weeks might have begun to wear on my patience.
Yeah, it's like, yes, you do, you have a great high going through Tomb of the Cybermen. It's like, okay, that was 4 solid weeks. It's like, all right, so what's the next story? It's like, okay, this next story is a 6-parter. It's like, okay, so this will be, 2 weeks longer than the last one. Okay. But it's significantly weaker than what you just watched. Like, I have to sit here for 6 weeks and watch this.
Yeah. Now, again, I'm not sure that anybody sitting down to watch the first episode of this would have known it was going to be a 6-parter.
I've gotten different reports about that in the comments. Like, I think some people said that, like, in the TV guide, they do say how many episodes it is, but...
Yeah, but I will be honest with you, I never watched the TV guide.
Yeah, that was sort of my next thing. It's like when people said that, they did announce Patrick Troughton taking over in the newspapers, and I said, that's great. I don't think any kids are reading those newspapers, though. And, if their parents are, they're not going to care enough to tell their kids, there's going to be a new actor on that show you watch. So
now, the idea that we're stretching this out to 6 parts to save on sets and costumes. The thing is here, since this is all taking place over the span of only 1 or 2 days, the costumes don't have to change. There are only 3 sets. There's the exterior of the gate where they met the first Yeti. There's the interior courtyard, which is where most of this is taking place. There's that tiny little jail cell, which again could have been left over from Evil of the Daleks, just slightly altered. And then there's the inner sanctum. So it's not like these are or should be incredibly expensive kinds of sets. So I'm not exactly sure why this one they felt needed to be a 6-parter.
Yeah, so... And maybe that is it, though, that it's like, we don't have very complicated sets. Like, maybe this saves so much money because it's like, okay, we have very simple sets, it's like, all right, here's a big room, we just sort of dress it up, and here's a gate and stuff. And we have these really simple villain costumes, like here's a metal ball inside of a giant grimace. It's all good. And it's like, okay, we can work with that. It's like, okay, what do we need for costumes? Robes, a bit of a mustache on some of them. What about the main guy? A really dumb hat. Do that and it should work.
And again, that does not look Buddhist at all to me. And I said it the last time. It looks very much like an Incan or Mayan sort of thing, or even an Aztec thing.
He stands out the most of them.
And he also is the least Chinese or Indian looking, or even Nepalese. I guess this would be in Nepal or Tibetan. There are a lot of them that don't look Asian, but he is the least Asian of them all.
It's one of those things where it's like, okay, if you look at any of these guys, you'd be like, these aren't that convincing. But then you look at him and it's like, well, they're more convincing than him, at least. Like, there looks like a little bit of effort. Like, okay, they've got sort of maybe a correct haircut, and some of them got a mustache. Like, okay, that at least looks not exactly just a white guy. It's like, this looks like the white guy they had in the office, just doing... Like, he was doing all the accounting stuff. It's like, hey, we need you to say some lines. Like, all right, cool. So, I'm not going to get a buzz cut or anything like the others, though. So, okay.
I may have told you this before. I actually, in the early 80s, again, I think I've told you this. I was cast in a show that I really didn't want to do. I love the script. I just didn't want to play the part that they ended up casting me in. The play is called Rashomon, and it's a story about an incident that happens in the woods, and there are 4 different people who watch it, and each of the 4 scenes in the play are recounted from a different person's point of view. And because it is set in Japan during the feudal period, the samurai and all that, all of the characters had to be Asian characters. Well, I'm obviously not Asian, but I got the long wig. I don't think I had a beard or a mustache, but they did the eye makeup on me so that my eyes would appear more Asian than Caucasian. And again, even in the 80s, we didn't have a huge amount of backlash or somebody saying, why did you choose an obviously Asian themed show if you don't have Asian actors for it. But I always felt that was kind of odd for us to have for the theater I was working in to have chosen an obviously Asian themed play, and yet we didn't have a single Asian person in it.
Yeah, it's like, do you remember the Ghost in the Shell movie that we watched?
Yeah.
Which, for anyone who's a fan of the original Ghost in the Shell anime movie, we didn't watch that. We only watched the live-action remake, and that had Scarlett Johansson as the lead character. And I remember there was a whole thing about whitewashing, and I was like, oh, well, I don't know. Yeah, that is kind of bad and stuff. And then I remember when we were watching that movie, it's like, okay, well, whatever, it's just Scarlett Johansson. And then they revealed that her character was, like, reborn from someone who was actually Japanese, and then they turned her into Scarlett Johansson. I was like, well, wait, you made that choice consciously then. That's all right. Like, you specifically in the plot of the movie. Like, okay, now I'm really stretching to try to enjoy this now.
And
so,
minor footnote to that story. In the original anime film, one of the characters was voiced by a friend of mine from college, Richard Epcar, who does a lot of anime and stuff like that. He's the voice of Raiden in Mortal Kombat.
He's Joseph Joestar on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which I'm currently reacting to. So
yeah, I actually know the guy who voices Joseph Joestar.
Yeah, which is interesting. Bobobo, if you watch that. So, I guess that's that.
Let's get this over with.
Yeah. That was a long tangent of everything, so part 5.
Mervyn and Henry, you're letting us down.
It's always a shame, too,
Come in,
when you get
child.
new writers like that and
You
they're not
have
that
no
great.
alternative.
Oh, now you say it right.
She-devil, wherever you are, call off these monsters!
Shiva?
I think it was She-Devil, referencing Victoria.
Oh.
Oh no!
See, Shiva's Hindu, but he is the destroyer.
Oh no, the Buddha.
Where's the doctor? Yes, he has been here before.
But that was 300 years ago. It's the same man.
Creton, the Abbot Songster wishes us to join our brothers in
So he's
Christ.
actually lived those 300 years, whereas the Doctor hasn't.
Songster. The Yeti. On the mountain. Yes, it's all coming back to me.
Well, tell us.
There was this cave.
Substance oozes from the cave.
Yes, that's part 5.
Now, one thing that I think might help to redeem all of this is if the bell, the Ganta, turns out to be the missing clue to help fight the intelligence or Padmasambhava or whoever, because that was introduced in the first episode. We've mentioned it several times, so I can't believe they're just going to leave that as a big red herring. I'm hoping that will somehow tie all of this together.
Yeah.
And why he was there, why he was given it 300 years previously, and now the TARDIS has brought him back to return it in a time of distress.
Yeah, it could be that.
That's what I'm hoping anyway.
Yeah. I feel like this episode also suffers from too many villains, because we have Song Sten, and we have the Master, but then we also have the Great Intelligence, and we also have the Yetis, and it's like, okay, this is a few too many people.
Kree Song was a villain earlier, and now he's not.
Yeah, so it's...
And Travers was a villain, and now he's not.
Yeah, it's a little too much, honestly, so... Okay.
And I've noticed you've hardly taken any notes over this.
Yep.
So this may be a short discussion at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Unless this really improves in the last episode.
Yeah.
Are you afraid?
Hesitantly, Kree hands his stave over to Songsten. As Kree opens the door, Songsten hits him on the neck.
Well, that was your own fault.
Padmasambhava temporarily regains control of his body.
Making me do this. Why? Release me. You will now go forth with the monks.
So I guess he is being controlled by the Great Intelligence.
Throne. Behind the throne, there lies the hidden room.
How do I get into it?
The Wizard of Oz.
It's very simple to get in. All you have to do is kick that guy, and then get in.
Travers and Robinson hide as the Yeti become animated.
Sure enough, they are animated.
As soon as it's safe, make for the curtain behind the throne. That's where the control room is.
But when we have destroyed the machine, what'll happen?
I have the faintest idea.
What?
Don't worry, Jimmy. It's going to be all right.
Doubled over in pain, the Doctor struggles to his feet.
Start knocking over the chess pieces.
Jamie and Conley start smashing the control panels. Is this where Jamie gets the idea for the next one?
Maybe.
No, Victoria, don't get him!
Padmasambhava tries to hypnotize Victoria to stop her.
On my knees, pack me home! On my knees, pack me home!
Money! Pack me money! Pack me
It's a very popular mantra back in the 60s. The mountain explodes as the intelligence dies away.
Good job. You made a volcano.
Oh no! It can't be.
No, this one's
A
legit.
Yeti. What's the matter with you? Are you cold?
Jamie shivers.
Oh, it's all right for you and your homemade Yeti kit.
That's right. I suppose there is a little bit of a nip in the air.
A nip? A nip? Just look at my knees, they're bright blue.
Horrible sight.
Can
Well,
not
if you
wear
would wear
some
pants.
next time?
Travelers head up the mountain towards the TARDIS. So, the bell played no part.
I was about to say, you were wrong. So,
Wow. Again, it's just a good idea. Very, I don't want to say poorly, but very weirdly executed.
yeah.
See, this is where the idea of a decent script editor, somebody, when these two guys turn in the script, he looks at it and goes, oh, this is a good story, but it's not visual. I mean, there's very little action in it.
Yeah.
So this is where, if I were the editor, I'd be taking out the red pen and going, okay, let's condense this, let's do this, this, and this, and then we've got ourselves a decent story.
Yeah. It's still so strange that it's like, okay, we have two people writing this. And this is what two people came up with, you know? So, yeah, I have some notes. It's not a lot of notes.
Well, we pretty much talked a lot of it through already in between the episodes.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, again, the exterior shots from what we saw, I'd love to know where that is. That was some really good stuff. Now, it was obviously not the Himalayas, because
Yeah.
the Himalayas are much taller and sharper peaks and stuff like that. But again, it does convey this idea of a very cold outdoor experience. The sets in the monastery, the few things that we saw, filmed at different angles, that all worked very well. The costumes were good. The characterizations were good. But it went on too long. There was just not enough story to fill 6 episodes.
Yeah. Let's see. The Great Intelligence was trying to make a body or a mass of goo, which I did actually remember in the Web of Fear. There was something about goo, like some strange. It was like going through the tunnels, and we made the Ghostbusters 2 joke, and it's like, oh, so maybe that's sort of what that's supposed to be.
Now, they've never explained in this series where the Great Intelligence came from. I mean, it's obviously extraterrestrial.
It's just some sort of bodiless intelligence from space. So
Who took over Padmasambhava 300 years ago.
Yes, kept him alive. To create the Yetis in order to... What?
That's another, the Yetis to perhaps distract people from what he was doing. To, why were the pyramid and the spheres in the cave and not in the monastery itself? Again, there's too many loose ends that, again, a script editor should have been able to say, wait a minute, why do we have this here and that, So it's just, again, it seems to be stretching it out to 6 episodes just so they can have 6 episodes.
Yeah, so the whole point was to make a body, even if it was just this, mound of goo or whatever. So he takes over Padmasambhava for 300 years, has him by hand alone build all the Yetis and all the the balls and stuff like that. You do all that, but then you have a certain amount of them put together with a pyramid, unless he had them make the pyramid, but obviously none of the other monks knew about that. It didn't even look like... Well, I guess Songsten did, so maybe it was just take over enough to get this guy to walk a pyramid to that cave to connect the 2 pyramids that are in there. Hopefully no one breaks the pyramids, so that... Because if one fails, the other fails. And then in the cave, there will be this... they will create the massive goo,
which seemed to be taking over the mountain and not... I mean, it seems to me that if you wanted to create an intelligence, you'd take over a body.
Yeah.
But instead, at the end, Jamie was saying, or Travers was saying, it seems to be taking over the mountain. Why would an intelligence need to take over a mountain?
I think it was just that it was covering the mountain, and so it's just this weird, like, it's a form, but it's shapeless, it's just some weird sort of construct, not a normal humanoid body. But why they need to be at two different places, like, if you can take over a guy and build these pyramids and all this stuff, just do that, and then, I don't know. So
Yeah, too many loose ends.
yeah, the plan doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's see. We did have Victoria fake poisoning, which that was clever at least.
Yeah, faked us out.
Yeah. So, and again, it was really felt like they didn't have much for her to do in this one. It's like, okay, so she's trying to go to the inner sanctum, and then she gets possessed, but they figure out immediately that she's possessed, and the doctor, gets her out of it.
Repossesses her.
I guess.
Unpossesses her.
Yeah. It's the doctor does an exorcism, I guess, and gets the great intelligence out, and then she's just there. She doesn't even, like, I'm not sure, what did she actually do in the climax? Like, because Jamie and everyone, they were breaking all the machinery and stuff. Obviously the doctor was holding back the
She
great
was
intelligence.
somewhat of a diversion, because trying to get to the Yeti, that forced Padme Sambhava to concentrate on her, which allowed Jamie and Tonmi to break everything up, and then ultimately to smash the pyramid.
Yeah. On top of it, seemed like the doctor was, like, using his psychic power to sort of hold back that. So I guess.
And again, I think perhaps in real time that would have looked a lot better, because we couldn't really tell what was happening there. But that appears to be the best idea, is that the two of them were fighting over her, which kept Padme Sambhava engrossed in trying to keep Victoria, so that then Jamie and Tonmi could break everything up.
Yeah, we're gonna be happy when we don't have to say that name anymore. So I will be very curious how many people actually write out that whole name in the comments. So work that into your comments, if just to show that you've made it to this part of the discussion at least. So let's see. So that's what I wrote down until, like, the end of the second episode, episode 5. Let's see. So she was in a trance, and then she wasn't. I wrote down empty. I don't remember why I wrote down empty, but I wrote that down. It was something about one of them. It wasn't about Victoria, I think. I don't really remember. We did have the master again. It seemed like too many villains. Like, okay, so you have the Yetis, then you have Krisong, then you have Songsten, and then Padma Sambhava, and then the Great Intelligence. I honestly feel like you could have taken Songsten and Padma Sambhava, just combine the two characters. They're exactly the same character. Here's this guy that's being controlled by the Great Intelligence. So I don't know why they needed to split that up.
Now, again, the idea of the bell, of the whatever it was,
Ganta.
Yeah, because to me, to tie that in, since you've mentioned it so many times, bring it in that last scene, and he gives the bell to Victoria, and then when Victoria rings it, perhaps the vibrations are what keep Padma Sambhava distracted, allowing everybody to break it up, and that way she goes, I can't, But to set the bell up as in 2 or 3 different episodes and then not use it, just, it's, I look at that as a writer and go, oh, that's a totally missed opportunity there.
Yeah, it's a gun on the mantle, but you just left it there.
Yeah.
So, you could even say, like, oh, when the Yetis show up, if you ring the bell, maybe that disrupts the signal, and so they don't get any instructions.
There needed to be some reason for the bell to be in the Doctor's possession, other than to bring him back 300 years later.
Yeah. Which, they also said when the Doctor met Padma Sambhava, it's like, oh, it's nice to see your face again. It's like, well, wait a minute. So, this Doctor specifically. We just figured, like, oh, well, he met the first Doctor, yeah. But it's like, oh, no, you met him before. It's like, well, okay, but if Jamie hasn't met this guy, then it could have only been when the second Doctor didn't have Jamie. But he didn't have Jamie for all of one episode. So presumably the Doctor meets him just after the power of the Daleks, before they make it to the Highlanders.
Well, it could be the thing, too, that he actually met Hartnell, but he recognizes the Doctor no matter what shape he takes.
I suppose you could also say, maybe at this point, obviously they haven't thought through the regeneration yet, and it was just a renewal. Maybe they were thinking, well, this is what the Doctor looked like when he was younger, so... Which is weird. Obviously, Troughton and Hartnell don't really look alike, so maybe that's the thought, is like, oh, well, when the first Doctor was really young, he did look like this. But that'd be weird. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're just, again, one line, something about when I saw you so long ago and gave you the Ganta. It was right after all this has started, I was hoping that someday you would come back and help me to, fix this situation that I'm in. Just anything like that. It's just, again, it's a wonderful thematic device, and then was totally wasted.
Why'd they give it to him in the first place? Like,
I thought he had stolen it,
Well, yeah.
In the first episode.
They seem to imply that he accidentally stole it. Like, he thought it was a gift. Turns out, they're like, oh yeah, it was stolen from us 300 years ago. And it's like, well, no, wait, it was given to you. It's like, well, then why don't you guys say that from the beginning? It's like, who was the one person, the one jerk who was like, oh no, that guy stole it, clearly. I don't know. Everyone was controlled. A lot of people being controlled. Songstand, and then obviously Padmasambhava. A little too much again. You could have combined the characters. It could have just worked out.
Well, I kind of understand that, in that at some point someone would have realized that Padmasambhava was outliving everybody.
Yeah.
It's one of those things about people who are immortal, is that you cannot get it too attached to people, because at some point, as they grow older and older and you don't, they're going to say, wait a minute, what's going on? I've grown from a teenager to an adult and you haven't changed at all. So I understand why the great intelligence takes over one person, and then that person controls Songsten and the others. That makes... technically it makes sense that way.
Yeah.
But then to have Padmasambhava actually age so badly like that... Again, Songsten is not the only abbot that he has controlled over the last 300 years.
Yeah.
Somebody at some point is bound to get suspicious about how we have the same... that our great leader, he's the master of the monastery, hasn't changed names in 18 generations.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is kind of interesting that it's like, he keeps aging. It's like, well, he's kept alive, but he's not, given the fountain of youth or anything. It's like, no, this is what this guy would look like if he lived 300 years. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. There's goo. I don't know.
Yeah, no explanation for the goo coming out of the cave and the goo taking over the mountain.
I thought it was like, when it started, like, oh, this weird sort of goo thing, but it would form into an actual body. But no, this was just some strange mass.
And again, to me, the logical explanation would be the monks leave the monastery so that the goo can come down the mountain into the monastery, which will then become the corporeal body of the great intelligence.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't make sense why it would be taking over the mountain. But again, just this giant blob coming down the mountain to the monastery would make perfect sense, but that's not what happened. So again, they set it up one way and then they don't finish it out that way.
Yeah. There was another room that was smashed up, which that was a new set. They never showed that room before, and it's like, oh, there it is. Let's go in. Oh, this is the first time we're seeing it. Break it, and they do that. It's like, okay, I thought we were saving money here, folks. Like, unless this is just their all-purpose control room that they break every so often. So, I don't know. So they had to break the sphere that controlled all the Yetis, and then the pyramid that was linked to the other pyramid, which killed the goo thing. And that's the plot. That's what happens in the show. So,
killed the goo.
Yeah. And then there was a real Yeti at the end, which they did mention that like early on. It's like, oh, the Yetis are normally, docile and nice and stuff. They've never been like this. So for some reason, the Great Intelligence had the guy make robots that looked like the already existing Yetis, which is odd. I mean, I guess it's a good disguise, but still,
theoretically enough to draw attention. But let's face it, the Yeti have been a worldwide phenomenon since the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Yeah. So, but there was a real one at the end, and that's where Travers is off to. So, that's all I wrote down. Kind of out of stuff to say.
What's up next?
Next up, I believe, is called the Ice Warriors.
Oh, this is supposedly one of the good ones.
Apparently, hopefully
people have talked about it. And didn't we see the Ice Warriors in?
Yes, in
the Third Doctor,
Curse of Peladon.
Yes,
I think.
Peladon or Peloton.
I think it was Peladon.
Yeah, Peladon.
Yeah, maybe they got the name from that though.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, we did see them in that one, and they're in a couple of newer Doctor Who episodes as well.
Yeah.
So
the Ice Warriors are not the Cosmic Pickle, are they?
No.
Okay.
That's different. They're from Alpha Centauri. Ice Warriors are from Mars. So
okay. Yeah, I remember when we first saw the Cosmic Pickle, which is what we called it, that other people said it had a much different connotation for a lot of other people.
Well, yeah. But no, that was the esteemed delegate from Alpha Centauri.
Alpha Centauri Pickle.
Yes. So, with one eye. It kind of looks like Plankton from SpongeBob.
It does, a little bit, yeah.
Just without the antenna and the mouth, they make Plankton, look not like a pickle. So, yeah. Also, I have been warned that in the Ice Warriors, there is something, I don't know if it is the Ice Warriors, but there's something with a heavily computerized voice, like the Cybermen we heard, in Tomb of the Cybermen, but apparently it's worse than the Cybermen's voice, so I'm going to be working on trying to get us subtitles for that episode. Okay. So, it's a bit tricky, but I will hopefully figure that out before next time. If I can't figure it out before next time, maybe we'll do something else before we watch the Ice Warriors. I'm not sure though. So, but we'll figure that out. Is there literally anything else we can say about this episode?
Not that I can think of.
I mean, it's one of those things like when we watch Tomb of the Cybermen, like, oh, it's so nice to have context going in. Are we going to have that much more context going into the Web of Fear than we had originally?
Well, now we'll understand at least Travers. Because remember, we were somewhat concerned that they had an obviously younger actor who had been made up to look old, and we kept saying, why did they do that?
It took a bit before they said, it's like, oh yeah, it's Professor Travers from the monastery. So I guess we'll understand him a bit more. I guess technically we'll understand why they're Yetis at all, because that was sort of the weird thing. It's like, oh yes, the London Underground and the subways and stuff. Here's some Yetis. Why did they choose Yetis? That seemed very odd, but at least now we know it's because they were originally in the Himalayas. So I guess there's that benefit. Other than that, I'm not sure how much else we're getting out of this one. So go ahead and leave your comments about how this is the best Doctor Who story of all time, because I know it will happen. It always happens. So this is actually why I stopped posting my thoughts on Twitter, because I always go in and I'm like, oh yeah, that wasn't a really good episode. It's like, oh, but that was really great. Or in the case of modern Doctor Who episodes, I'm like, oh, this was a really, really great episode. Turns out like it killed someone's grandma or something. Like it's that bad. So
all right, let's hope we're not killing any ancestors.
Yes. With that being said, we're Alex and Dad from Seventh Hour Films, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.